Breaking news out of the NFL. Saints quarterback Derek Carr has a shoulder injury that could threaten his availability this season. That's according to the NFL Network. Carr had an injury-riddled 2024 campaign with New Orleans, missing 7 games this past year. Along with Carr, Saints depth chart currently at quarterback has Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, Ben DiNucci. Saints hold the number 9 overall pick in this month's draft. Let's bring in our Ryan Wilson to react to the news here. So I guess the big thing, Ryan, is sort of the availability this season, because you're not sure if it's the start of the season or the entire season. What's your first take upon hearing the news?
This sort of shakes up what they're going to do at number 9, right, Tommy? That's where the Saints currently find themselves. And Derek Carr is going into his age 34 season. He has 2 years left on his current contract. So it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility that perhaps Kellen Moore in year 1 would consider a quarterback at 9. Or they could build around Derek Carr had he been healthy. But the fact that he may not be available for parts or all of the 2025 season is suddenly a huge concern, because I had a 3-round mock draft come out last Monday, Tommy, and I had them taking Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman, because that's where they need help if Derek Carr is healthy. And then I had them circling back and getting a quarterback in Kyle McCord later on day 2. But this certainly changes what they're going to do. At the top, Cam Ward's going number 1. Kellen Moore was at that pro day. We saw him there in Miami, but they're not going to have a chance at Cam Ward there. At number 9, though, this is where the conversation circles back to, because we've been talking about where will Shedeur Sanders go, Tommy, if he does not go 2 to the Browns or 3 to the Giants. The next natural landing spot, even when Derek Carr was healthy, was pick 9. And there was some conversation that maybe he slips past the Saints there because of Derek Carr at the time being 100% healthy and slipping to the Steelers. Now that changes, and this front office and new coaching staff in New Orleans has to figure out what they want to do, because as you note, you do have Jake Haener, who played a part of last season. You do have Spencer Rattler, who played part of last season as a rookie. Both guys struggled, and if they want to go in a different direction with a new head coach, you think at number 9, Shedeur Sanders might come back into the picture.
Okay, so they could go that route, especially if Shedeur Sanders happens to be there when they're still selecting in Green Bay. If we just take out that hypothetical part of it, just from a talent evaluation perspective, where did you have Spencer Rattler? Where do you still have Spencer Rattler? Because he's still, I know Jake Haener's a young quarterback, but Spencer Rattler, a very young quarterback in his own right.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler was one of my favorite players in last year's draft class. I had him graded as a 3rd-round pick, and we remember a year ago, 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12 picks, and then Spencer Rattler was the next one off the board in round 5. And he struggled last year. There's no two ways about it. I hesitated momentarily because the offensive line struggled. They had injuries at the skill position, but there are no excuses in the NFL, and Spencer Rattler probably would tell you that he needed to play better. So he could very well be in the mix. We'll have to see where the new head coach Kellen Moore is on these young quarterbacks not named Derek Carr, whether it's Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. And if he feels okay with them going into the season or perhaps playing the entire season, they'll probably go in a different direction at number 9. Maybe they do, in fact, bolster that offensive line. But if there's any trepidation, any concern about the quarterback position without Derek Carr, again, you have to seriously consider taking a quarterback at 9. And also another consideration, maybe you trade back up in round 2, back into round 1 time, and you get a player like Jackson Dart if you happen to like him. But there are a lot of ifs in that sentence, and there could be other teams having that same line of thought. So if you have the 2 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, I think is how the saying goes, or 1 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So if you have Shedeur Sanders there at 9, you take him, and then you reevaluate the rest of your draft as you move forward.
Okay, this news certainly throws a wrinkle into things in terms of what the Saints potentially could do.
News out of college football, where Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava did not attend spring practice today. That has been confirmed by our partners over at 24/7 Sports. This news comes with the Vols QB1 in talks over in for Tennessee last season, throwing for 19 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. All right, let's talk about it with the football team writer for Go Vols 247, Patrick Brown. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us here on HQ. So we're talking about Nico Iamaleava, not at spring practice today. How did we get to this point with Nico and Tennessee, Patrick?
Well, Jacqueline, you touched on the original NIL deal that Nico Iamaleava signed as a recruit back in 2022. That was sort of a groundbreaking NIL deal at the time. It was sort of the first really big NIL deal for a high-profile recruit and a high-profile top talent at quarterback. He was a 5-star, the number 2 player in the country according to 24/7 Sports, and he's operated on that deal during his first 2 and now into his 3rd season at Tennessee, and certainly with some other quarterbacks getting more money in the portal for transferring this offseason. I think Nico and his people, his family and those around him are kind of in response to that. The market maybe has changed for top-level quarterback talent, and so I think from their standpoint, they're trying to get more money for him, before this season. So certainly the timing of what's been reported about the ongoing negotiations, these aren't necessarily new negotiations. Tennessee and Nico have been talking about a new deal really going back to the end of last season, and but certainly the timing of, with the transfer portal opening next week, and also Tennessee wraps up spring practice tomorrow. They're supposed to have their orange and white game at Neyland Stadium tomorrow, and also going public with it, I think, is a pretty clear sort of leverage play, and we'll see if Tennessee is willing to risk letting him go, or if they get something worked out.
It's crazy that we're talking about leverage deals and not coming to practice and holding out, if you will, and $8 million. And we're talking about college players. We're not talking about the NFL right now. As mentioned, that deal, $8 million out of high school back in 2023. You mentioned that he's trying to get a raise based off of what the market is for a starting quarterback at the college ranks for top programs. What are you hearing about what he is asking in terms of a raise from that current deal that we just discussed?
Well, I think with some quarterbacks that also, had sort of their deals and their, the financials of their deals sort of revealed or reported this offseason. You look at, I think it was Darian Mensah, who went from Tulane to Duke, I believe. I think he was reported at $3 million. There's been talk of Carson Beck at $4 million. And, with these NIL numbers, you always have to sort of take them not with a grain of salt necessarily, but sometimes what's reported is more accurate than others. But I would think it would be sort of in that ballpark that Nico's asking for. Again, this is a guy that led Tennessee to the college football playoff as a redshirt freshman. He's a big-time recruit. If he went into the portal, he would have a lot of suitors and a lot of programs. Maybe not this time of year, not as many as maybe in the winter have, a few $1 million lying around to splash on a quarterback. But certainly the market, I think, has shifted. And again, he maybe wasn't the catalyst for Tennessee having the season it had in 2024. They had Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year and an outstanding defense. Those were probably the two main reasons why they got to where they got to at the end of the season. But certainly Nico had his ups and downs, and he's a big talent. I mean, again, they were expecting him to be even better this season as a second-year starter. And again, I think, you touched on sort of college football, and this is not being the NFL. College football has always been a big business, and now this part of the business is becoming more and more common. And for Tennessee, to have your most high-profile player come out publicly and try to air this out in public, I think is not ideal. And like I said, we'll see where it turns out.
All right, Patrick, we certainly appreciate it. We'll have to see if things get resolved. We just show, the cute.
Chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Ngày hôm nay mình sẽ tiếp tục hướng dẫn các bạn làm vòng, và hôm nay của mình sẽ có tiêu đề là màu xám. Mọi người, hôm nay tiêu đề mình có là màu kem.